if you think about yourself, if we each think about ourselves, what do we count on? How do we organize our day? How do we organize everything about our lives? And I would submit that most of us start with the place that's home. And it is our base. You can't even get a post office box if you don't actually have a physical address. Everything depends on a sense of place.
So to me, affordable housing is housing that is affordable, is a way that I prefer to think about it. And so that's not necessarily for lower income people, it's for people throughout the income strata. So it's just defined in the planning field as not spending more than 30% of your income on housing. So if you make more, you can spend more. Or if you make less, you spend less. So we shouldn't necessarily think about affordable housing as low-income housing. We shouldn't equate those two. We've identified, number one, that there's a huge need for more affordable units for the people who are already here, not just for the people who might be coming here, and that is probably the number one, if not one of the number one, economic development needs out there. You know, we have commercial space. We could use more, but we have commercial space out there. We've got loads of roads and interstate, more than most people have. We've got trains, we've got sewer and water. We've got all sorts of things out there. But what we don't have is we don't have housing. If you want to come here and be a startup, a place where you can live affordably, or if you're looking to hire a bunch of people, a place where those people who you're going to hire can come to live.
In addition to that, I think you'd find that if you had $1 million to spend on a house, you'd have lots of choices these days. If you can afford $800 a month in rent, there's nothing available. And there is, we look at, again, you can always rent an apartment here if you have enough money, but the vacancy rate is now less than 1%. So there really is a dire lack of housing. In a normal market, you would have 5 or 10% vacancy, and that means the market's somewhat in balance. When you get down to 1%, it means there are people who are living in tents, people who are living in garages, people who are living in really unhealthy places simply because they can't afford it and there isn't enough housing out there.
The groups that need affordable housing are the groups that are vital to the lifeblood of what a community is and can be.
It's very important if you want a whole community, if you want a community that functions, that feels real, that's genuine, that literally involves the neighbors helping neighbors and everything else that we care about in Vermont. You want a community with a sizable portion of affordable housing, with a bunch of housing that's available to lower and moderate income people, certainly, because you have lower and moderate income people in your town. We're talking people who are working 1 and 2 jobs. They just need a house that they can afford. And over here, we also want to talk about our seniors, all sorts of other people who may have limited income for a variety of reasons. We want them to be able to live in our town. So to me, a town with enough affordable housing is a town that's a whole town.
We're fortunate in Randolph to have on the order of 168 to 170 units of affordable housing. There's a range of options in that group. The Development Corporation, Randolph Area Development Corporation, has been our primary partner in the development of that housing, and they have acquired 2 mobile home parks, which gives us a range of services that goes beyond the fixed stock. They manage 3 elderly housing properties, the Red Lion Inn, Randolph House, and Jocelyn House. And then the other properties are affordable housing at a range of services, some subsidized in one way or another. But the combination of that 170 units and the addition of a few units managed by other nonprofits for handicapped persons or affordable needs gives us a diversity of people, families, ages in our community and sustains the growth that becomes who we are.
finding rentals, finding housing is probably one of the biggest challenges we have. We are starting to have to find employees from outside of the area because there aren't enough people here to fill our positions. So knowing that, you know, trying to bring people to the community. In fact, I think it's a responsibility of our communities to try and attract people to the area. The Upper Valley is a wonderful place to be, to raise families, to retire. There's a lot of people that could benefit from it. But I do think it's a struggle to find affordable housing.
We're going to need something like 8,000 new young workers over the next 2 decades in our region, just to fill the jobs that we currently have and that we expect. And so those people need housing. And so you can think at a couple of people per household, we again not only need 4,000 more affordable units for the people we have, we need another probably 4,000 units for the people we'd like to have to fill those jobs that we think are going to be there.
Some faces of workforce housing are teachers, your public servants, your police officers, the person who's driving the fire truck, the person who's standing there cleaning your teeth, the person who's servicing your car, person who's taking care of your child. It's people you interact with every day. That's the workforce. It's those of us out there working. So we're everywhere.
The groups of people who potentially need affordable housing are certainly those young couples who are starting out, young persons out of high school or college, and young married who don't have the capital to buy a home and find renting on some of the private developments a bit expensive.
One of the challenges in many parts of rural Vermont is families being able to find housing and a place to call home. The reason that those options are so important is that those families bring so much to the communities in terms of energy, in terms of volunteering for fire departments, in terms of serving on the select board or the school board, running events, working in the community.
On the other extreme, without an elderly community, we lose a sense of consistency, we lose a sense of history. We want our kids to grow up knowing about all the aspects of who and what Randolph is and can be, and you do that by maintaining both extremes of client.
You know, they often are concerns about what the housing will look like, who will live there, and the reality is often that the affordable housing that we construct, particularly the housing that we're constructing today, is often among some of the best built, most attractive housing in a community. We have to make it last. We're investing significant dollars to make it last, to keep operating costs low, and so we can keep it affordable, and that means that they're well built, and they're often much better built than many other buildings. We definitely look for input around design through the public permitting process, whether it's through the planning board review, whether it's meeting with select board officials, whether it's meeting with the regulatory officials early on, so that if they've got concerns about what it's looking like or where, how we're working, how it will look within a site, we want to make sure we're bringing those concerns to the fore at the front end.
It's important to think we're not only talking about the housing, we're talking about the residents. You're talking about people like me living in houses like mine when we're talking about both affordable housing and people who need affordable housing.
It's great to be here in Safford Commons. It took several years for it to be built, but as you can see, it's now built in a wonderful place to live. There are 28 units in Safford Commons here, and this is a great addition to our regional housing needs.
But for me, as someone who looked at Woodstock, really wanted to move here, and almost decided not to because I couldn't afford the housing, it's really comforting to see it every day getting built, and to know that other young families will be able to make that choice and say, yes, I will move to Woodstock, I will choose to work here, because I'll be able to have a home here.
If we operate from an inclusive perspective, I don't think there's any reason why we couldn't find a way to have enough housing. We often hear statements that are assumptions and expectations. They're not facts. They're not grounded in information. If we were to listen and if we were to think about what makes a healthy community for all of us, I have a great deal of confidence and belief that we could find solutions.